Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Today, Beatles researcher Steve Fawber and team are back to take us through additional information and insights into Paul McCartney's Standing Stone. We also discuss how occult rituals and symbolism permeate the music and entertainment industry. And so, without further ado, here's the interview with Steve and his team. Thanks for listening. Well, folks, we have a great show, and this is like a long-running series now. Steve Fawber's back with Tani and John Lennox, and Ralph couldn't make it, but he's here in spirit. And we have part 4 of The Standing Stone. And we did a preview of the slides going back about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and I think you're really, really going to enjoy what the team is going to present today. So with that, the first graphic I'm going to show here is something that Ralph put together, and it says the number 49, Human Sacrifices, Paul McCartney's Standing Stone, Part 4. So we're going to get into what the number 49 means in a bit. Is that right?
Yes. The only thing different, though, is Tani created that cartoon there.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry about that. Okay, and then we're going to get into what the number 49 means. I think that everybody's going to be very intrigued, very interested in what the team here has revealed. Okay, so the first thing is that we have new drone footage from John and his wife. So let's run that drone footage right now and take a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
All right, so on slide number 4, team, we have a lot going on here, and this looks like a map off the internet. And who wanted to take the lead here and explain what's going on and what we're looking at?
Well, I guess that'll be me. Well, what you're looking at right now is a still shot I took from that particular government-based website in Scotland. And it's a view of the Hyde Park farm. And there is a big standing stone on the field up there. And when I finally got to that site, I discovered there were some measurement tools there, and I started doing measurements. And I came up with 49 3 times from the farm, from the corner of the fences towards the standing stone. So that's basically how I got there.
Okay, so what we're talking about, Tani, is so you have dotted in red, we see a triangle.
Yep.
And we see 49 meters, 49 meters, and 49 meters. And the middle dotted line goes to, looks like maybe the center of the farm, maybe a doorway or something, and maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so we see Billy's farm, Hyde Park Farm. Then we have the triangle, and the apex of the triangle, Tani, that is where the standing stone is, yes?
That's correct, Mike. Yeah. Okay.
Then you have a yellow circle. You've highlighted something there to the left of the image. What is that?
In the next slides, you will see more of that. But it's probably, as we think, the old entrance, and maybe it's still there, we don't know. But it was probably the old entrance to the underground enclosure, which is also part of that.
Okay.
Of that background, yeah?
All right, so we'll get into more detail on that in a little bit. And then the bottom right, it says here lie buried, and then we have the number, is it 94 or 49? I can't see what's circled there.
It's 49, Mike, because when I did my first measurement on that farmland, I came up with the number 49 just only once, measuring from one corner towards the standing stone, and I thought by myself, 49, where did I see that before, And then my memory went back to the opening scene of the the Yellow Submarine Beatles animated movie. And at the very beginning, when the song Eleanor Rigby starts to play, you see a fragment, a still, or some moving pictures of a standing stone. And that's what it says in here, library number 49. And that's when I got it.
Very interesting. So the tombstone has the number 49. And then when you measured out the distances, and what you measured out, Tani, is not arbitrary, right? So you took the corners of what seems to be a segmented portion of the property, which would be the base of the triangle.
Yep.
And then you just drew the lines from the corners to the standing stone, and that's how you got the 49 meters.
Correct, because I thought, it could be a coincidence if I would only have measured 49 only once, then you could chalk it up as some kind of coincidence. But if it happens 3 times over, and like you said, Michael, the central line goes towards a pretty recently built barn attached to the farm, and there is a door, which become more apparent later on in the slides probably, but that's the entrance to where probably the new, or most likely the new entrance towards this underground enclosure is.
Okay. All right. So this is very, very interesting. Let's move to slide 5.
Yeah, just quickly, I didn't want this to pass by without it, but the 49, the 4 stands for Paul.
All right. So Paul, 4 letters, McCartney, 9 letters, 49.
That's correct. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Good point. Yeah. I'm glad you didn't let that go. All right, so let's move to slide number 5 now. And, okay, so we have an image on the left and the image on the right. So what's the image on the left showing us?
I put a marker there. This government-based website also had a possibility to put markers, to leave markers behind. And that's where the blue spot, what you see on the left image, is the same as the yellow spot that you showed in the previous slide.
Okay. Okay, and then we'll get into more detail, Tani, about what exactly that means in a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so the picture on the right, or the image on the right, is a little blurry, but what are we being shown here?
Well, that's the same point as where the blue marker is, actually, and Stephen and I talked it over and over and over and over again, and we both came to the conclusion that, there is some kind of debris on top of that. I'm not sure what it is. Is it either tires or stones or boulders, something like that. But it shows a black mark in the middle, and it's obviously colder down there. So that could possibly be a lead towards, well, whether it's still there or not, an entrance to the underground enclosure.
Okay. All right. So you're saying that the color variations could possibly mean something?
Yeah.
Okay. So the darker colors, what do you think that means? Like the black here?
I think it's either a colder spot or it's either more deeply buried into the ground or something, like some staircase going down or,
Okay. All right. So we'll get into more detail on that as well, I'm sure. So let's go to the next slide. And the next slide, we have, again, Billy's farm is in the middle. And then we have some shadowed out areas. So what do the shadows represent?
Well, it's basically a slide. The one you're showing now is basically two slides, which means I put an overlay to it. And the overlay is what you see in the black parts. And it goes back to a map that comes from 1920. So that was also an indication that the standing stone was already there back then, and even earlier, as we probably will find out later. And it comes out directly underneath, give or take a few meters, directly underneath what you see, the standing stone. Now, this is where I basically made the black parts you saw earlier transparent. Okay,
so you're saying that this particular image, Tani, dates back to the 1920s. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, that was the black part overlay I showed you you showed in the previous slide.
Okay, all right. So this overlay,
yeah,
with the shadowed out.
Yeah, I put it on top of a very recent map of High Park Farm.
I see, and that would be this one here.
That will be that one, yeah.
All right, and so the standing stone has been there for a very long time then.
Yeah, it was even shown in the earliest map I could find was dated back to 1888. So that's a long time ago.
I have a question, Tani. The area on the right of that photograph there, it also shows dark area. Do you think that could be an underground chamber going to where we think the daffodil area is?
Well, Stephen, I've been thinking about that, and John has seen it with his very eyes since he was up there with his wife making this drone footage. But there's a little stream that goes from the backside of the farm all the way up to the Scaroblingarry standing stone, which is another standing stone, a little 1.8 kilometers further away. So 1 + 8 is again 9. So that was where now the Pooball Burn is, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, because you probably will pronounce it better than I do, but it's a little stream and they call it a burn in Scotland.
Yep, Pooball Burn, yep.
Okay, so to recap, where we're at so far, guys, is that we have this triangular formation. If I go back to that slide for a moment, we have the area which, Tani, you have highlighted in yellow. We believe something is going on there.
Mm-hmm.
The standing stone, which is at the apex of the pyramid, has been there for a long time. So this is not something that just appeared in the 1960s. This is something that's been there a long time.
Long time, yeah. Now, what you see, Mike, what's probably even interesting, can you take the slide? Yeah, that one. If you see, I wrote down the letters High Park Farm, rightly above the farm. But to the right of that, you can see the contours of where now the Pooball Burn is.
That would be here?
Yeah, that would be there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so it's to the back then.
Yeah, and it wasn't always there. It wasn't always there. So that's pretty recent, but I think it was dug out in the 60s, I think.
So let's take a look at this slide here. This is slide number 8. And so this is a close-up, Tani, of your measurements.
Mm-hmm.
And this is good because now we can see that what was done here, that they took the corners of the rectangular formation of the farm, and when you draw the lines, like I mentioned before, from each corner to the standing stone, we get a triangle. And we know Billy loves triangles.
Yeah.
And then you have this blue line in the center, which goes right to the front of the farm, the farmhouse.
Front door, pretty recently built new barn on the house. Yeah, attached to the house.
Okay. And we could see 49 meters, 49 meters, 49 meters.
And another thing, it isn't a coincidence. Of course, we could already see that it wasn't a coincidence. But I took these measurements on another site, which had the same features as the government-based website where I took the measurements from. So it's no longer a coincidence anymore. On every single a website where it has these possibilities of taking measurements. It's the same everywhere.
Okay. All right. Very good. Excellent.
Could I interject for a second?
Sure.
When he was showing those other parts, the darker areas, the slides before that,
Yeah.
he says that a lot of times in topography, even in the past, that will stand as underground type of images. I'm not sure he mentioned that. Maybe he did. But so those chambers, that's actually a chamber, and that's what I had always thought was there, seeing other standing stones that have chambers underneath. So I believe that's a burial chamber under there. So
yeah, correct, Stephen. That's correct, because thank you very much for explaining that, or highlighting that, because it's the truth. It is taken from a map which is named a geographical map, which in topography means structures either underneath or above the ground. And you once said it before, Mike, as above, so below. So that's basically what's happening here.
Okay, so we're back to slide 6. So are we saying the areas that have the shadow or are darkened out here, that this comes from an old map, and these darkened areas could represent underground formations?
Yeah, correct. Structures as above as well as underneath the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, and since there's nothing above it, or there was never really a structure around that, the process of elimination would tell me that was an underground chamber that's pretty large, when you look at the size of the stone. And then the tunnel, probably underneath where that gate he suspects is, or the underground chamber, it goes down to the underground chamber from that left side there at the top.
So we're saying that here, this long line across here to the upper left,
yeah,
could possibly be something underground.
Yeah, and then right there where you just had your cursor up the top there, that's where that chamber, we believe, where you go down under the ground and then go through a tunnel and you get to that chamber that way.
Okay, and what's interesting is how large this darkened area is right by the standing stone.
Yep.
It's pretty big, yeah. It's pretty large, yeah, indeed.
So this would also say, though, that Billy's farmhouse has access to something underground if these areas that we're highlighting, if that's what it is, underground structures, right? So it says that his entire farmhouse has something underneath it.
Yeah.
It could also mean something above the ground. So the what you're pointing at right now, that black structure, could also be the early farm, because you have to keep one thing in mind. The difference between these two maps is over 100 years old.
Some of this could be underground. Some of it could have been structures that were above ground, but because of the age of the map going back, would you say, Tony, 1920?
Yeah, this one is from 1920, correct, yeah.
Yeah, some of these structures that were there back in 1920 are no longer there.
Could possibly be. We don't have any evidence of that.
Okay, all right, so let me just make sure I understand. So it could have been something above ground, but it could also be something below ground.
Yes, absolutely. That's the explanation of what this map represents, yeah.
Okay, all right, got it.
And one more thing, Mike, before you move from that, the reason you're not seeing that new triangle that he found, the 49 meter, is because that's back in 1920, and now a new entrance, we believe, is coming from the farm itself, from the farmhouse, is going underground right to that chamber.
Okay.
Why that's not showing up there, because that was back in 1920 before it's done, we believe.
All right. Okay, so very interesting. Now, slide number 9, what are we seeing here?
This is a small section of a larger image, and what it shows is, again, the position of the standing stone, the High Park farm. You can even see the Pooh Ball burn. You can see a rectangled red marked shape to the right of the farm, which you come into later. But I was basically interested also in that green highlighted pyramid structure, and it was basically I saw from up in the air that the fences over there had a triangle shaped form.
Okay, so this triangle here, Tony, this green section here, the edges, is that a fenced area?
Yes, it's a complete fenced area. It'll become more clear in the next slides, I think.
Okay, and I know we'll get into the red area, but this is what?
Well, this is where in one of your previous videos, and I believe it was the one with the bent-back tulips you did with Stephen and John, we saw footage of Linda, Billy, and the kids supposedly planting tulips.
Okay.
So that is the area where they were at the time.
Okay, so that's the area. All right. Okay, and I will insert that footage again into the show.
And Mike, what I think is interesting about that, where the tulips are, and that he's actually pinpointed it in those previous in 1920 map, it does show like a dark area almost tunneling out to that area.
Yeah, it does.
You know, that could be right where we think Paul is buried, possibly there, not under the standing stone, but he could be there too. There's two different places he could be, in my opinion.
What we're saying is, I'm glad you brought that up, Steve, because some people are saying, oh, is the standing stone like a gravestone? Biological Paul is lying underneath the standing stone. So what you're saying is maybe yes, maybe no. The standing stone can also be a marker of, let's say, sacred ground, and that underneath there are chambers where various people who have passed away might be interred.
It's telling. It's very telling that the red rectangled area is exactly within the green area that shows a pyramid structure. And believe it or not, I started doing measurements on that, and the outcome was 666 meters. It's uncanny.
Are you kidding me? So from the standing stone to that red area is 666 meters?
No. When you put measurements around every corner of the pyramid shape, it measures exactly 666 meters.
Oh, I've got you. Okay.
We'll see that, and we see that in further slides. We can see that.
All right, so let's move to the next slide, and that would be slide number 10. And so these are captures from the video of Billy and Linda and the kids planting what we believe to be, or Steve, what you believe to be bulbs. So what should we focus on with this particular slide?
Well, what we see there is indeed from the footage you showed in the band Back Tulips video. And we wondered where that was, where they were standing. And I did some analyze of the whole area. And what you see on the left picture is what Linda is facing at. She was facing the hills backwards. And you see Billy on the right, and he's facing towards the farm. Okay. Which is being marked by that yellow, little red yellow triangle. Okay, so where they're standing, let's go back to the previous slide. So you're saying that where they're standing is where that red triangle is on slide number 9. Spot on, Mike, yep. Okay.
I thought it was fantastic he pinpointed that, just from landmarks out there, the side of the barn.
You can see that on the map, and I believe it's been shown in the next few slides. There's an elevation where it also shows the elevation of the property, and you can clearly see that what Linda is watching at the first, the most left picture, is obviously hills, and Billy is obviously facing the farmhouse and the trees. It's very blurry, but you can make it out. Okay. All right, so the next slide, it says pay attention to the directions of the fencing and the triangle-shaped roof of the house. Yeah. The position of the rectangle shape behind Billy. So, all right, Tony, so what should we be looking at here? Oh, well, what we've been looking at is a pretty recent picture of the farm and some fencing. You see, the structure of the property. And you can also see it's a little bit small, but where Billy is standing in that little rectangle picture, you can see that the fences are exactly the same as the fences you see on the recent picture. So where I put those little two cartoon figures, that's probably the spot, most likely the spot that they were standing. Behind those two cartoons, you can see the flower bed, the fencing of the flower bed there. Okay, all right. So this is showing us where they were standing. Yeah, most likely. Yeah. Most likely. Okay.
Tony, those seem to be bushes there now. Do you think it's possible they planted bushes over the top of the tulip area that I'm speculating are tulips?
Could be, but there's also a time span again, because this is a pretty recent picture. The one is the big slide, and the little picture in that, the picture in picture, also goes back 50 years ago. So, things have grown in the meantime, or maybe they've planted new things. I don't know. Well, that's a good point, because the video of Billy and Linda, that was taken a long time ago.
Yeah, really.
1968, wasn't it? 1968 or 69 or?
Yeah, it had to be the late 60s, maybe the early 70s. So we're talking about 50 years ago or so. And what you're saying is this image right here that we're looking at on slide 11 is a current picture of the farm.
Pretty recent anyway.
Pretty recent. Okay, recent.
4 or 5 years old, I think, yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the next slide. This is slide number 12. And what should we focus on here?
Well, it's basically the picture where Billy, on the left, that's Billy on the picture. And I had those 2 red markers and again the yellow triangle. And you compare the yellow triangle that I put there with the yellow triangle on the picture on the right. So that's where the farm is. And if you look at the positioning of the fences, as well as left, as well as on the right side of the picture, you can see that those little 2 markers I put there point out, the direction of the fencing.
Okay. All right. So here's the farm. On the left-hand side, we see the yellow triangle.
Yeah.
That's the farm because that matches the triangle here.
Yep.
And Billy is facing this way. He's facing to the right.
Well, yeah.
So on slide number 13, we have some more measurements. And so, all right. So, Tani, what are these measurements about? Oh, there's the 666 I think you mentioned before.
Yeah. That's what you see. The dotted lines you see in the picture above is the triangle shape that moves from fences to fences towards the standing stone. And I just purely curiosity, I thought, well, let's just measure one side. And it came up with 222 meters. And it happened again the second time. And, we all know what 3 times 220 is if you add that up. And I'll be damned, it was 666. And what you see in the picture below are the measurements of the flower bed.
Right here.
Yeah, right there. And I did some math on that. And, well, the outcome you can see printed out in yellow on the right. It's uncanny. It all comes down to either 6 or 9, what they're also fond of, Mike, and what you showed so many times before in your videos. It's the truth. It all comes down to numbers and figures, and they even seem to do their math backwards. I mean, it's almost unbelievable.
They can get very clever with how they present their numbers.
Oh, yes.
Very, very clever. People want an easy way to look at it, but sometimes it is very easy to see. Other times you have to sit down and you have to take a look and figure out how they encoded it.
Yeah.
Like as you did here, right? So you have 24.
Because it's 24, 12. So if you add that up.
Right. And then convert it to inches, you get 3780.
Yeah.
And then 3 plus 7 plus 8 plus 0 is 18. And 1 plus 8 equals 9.
And whether it is done in meters or in inches, they always happen to show something. You said it in previous shows, Mike, and you're absolutely right. It isn't just the numbers; it's the patterns you see.
Yup, and it is unbelievable how much effort goes into making these numbers work.
When I first saw this, and it was in the Bent Back Tulips that Stephen was telling his tale. The first drone footage of John and his wife, he couldn't get exactly towards the farm, and that's when the point when Stephen said, I will give I don't know how many money to be able to fly a plane over there, and with some desperation in his voice, almost like he said, well, it's probably never going to happen. And that's the point where I actually banged my fist on the table and said, like hell it is, and that's how eventually got the ball rolling, and that's when I came up with this.
Yeah, very interesting. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I said he did a fantastic job. I was blown away when he came up with this stuff. He was just like sending me a message on Messenger, and I was seeing this, and I'm saying this is too good not to put out there. This is something that has to get out there.
It was exciting and scary at the same time, I can tell you, because I didn't sleep for 2 nights in a row after I saw this all.
Now, this is probably a good point in which to say that even though we're showing this information, we're not condoning people converging on the farm. I just want to make sure that we make it clear to everybody that we're doing this, it's research, and somebody could argue that, well, if you can do the research, somebody else can do it. That's fine. I understand that argument, but I'm talking specifically to those people that just want to go there on a lark.
Well, you know what it is, Mike, and you're absolutely right. But there's another very important thing, because the fence that was there, the fence that John stumbled upon when the second time he got up there, the fence was locked.
Yeah.
But that's also the only way to another pretty big tourist attraction, which is the second standing stone. It's called the Scaroblingarry Standing Stone, and the road that John and Gillian wanted to go on with the gate that was closed is also the only road that leads up to the Scaroblingarry Standing Stone. So, if I would get up there or you would go up there and you would probably ask the nearby farmers if you want to go and see the Scarrobo and Gary Stone, they will open the fence for you, no problem at all. But since John and Gillian had been there before, and they returned, and they returned even for a third time, they said, let's lock up the whole thing because they have been nosing on the farm. And that goes back to the song. When winter comes, or something it was, wasn't it? The new Paul McCartney song. Those two foxes have been nosing around.
Right.
And they obviously didn't want John and Gillian to nose around any further.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I had a couple of comments where people said, oh, that song was written a long time ago and blah, blah, blah. And I have to constantly remind people that how a song is written, it's in stages. So maybe the music was written a number of years ago.
Yeah.
And maybe there were original lyrics to the song that Billy wrote years ago, but the lyrics can change based upon him taking the song off the shelf, reworking it, and saying, you know what, I'm going to insert these lyrics. I'm going to refresh the lyrics, new lyrics. You're
100% right, Michael, because if you look at the credits of those songs, the original song, George Martin was even involved in that. And when it's finished, it says copyright 2021. So he obviously adjusted the lyrics or something. He has to. Yeah. I mean,
again, people want to look at things. It's too binary in their minds. Either the switch is on or the switch is off. And that's just not how it works.
No.
So, yes, the song could have been written, recorded years ago. And then, the song, like I said, it was pulled off the shelf, and he's like, you know what? I like this song, but I'm going to adjust the lyrics, rewrite them to suit what it is that I want to convey now.
Yeah, maybe you should get a message through to us.
Yes, I think so. I really do. I think that was a message coming through his McCartney 3 album saying, hey, you're nosing around on my property.
Mm-hmm.
And then, John, when you first went there was no lock on that gate, and it was after we aired the show about the Standing Stone that a lock was put on the gate.
That's right, yep.
Yeah. So obviously they were watching the show, or they became aware of the fact that there was research going on and people were taking a look. Specifically you, John, you troublemaker. All right, but I just want to go back to what I said before, though. So, folks, please, it's very important that you don't make a spectacle out of this. And I know it's very interesting and stuff like that, but we also want to be able to respect privacy of individuals and think of it in terms of your own property. It's not something that you would probably appreciate. So, but with Billy being a public figure and all this stuff and him dropping the clues, quite honestly, he's almost inviting inspection. Again, it is a fine line, I believe. There's a balance that has to be achieved whenever you're doing something like this, because you also don't want to be disrespectful, especially the Standing Stone and what it represents.
And they're watching the property 24/7 because there are two farms nearby that where the fence is. That's the only road. So you are constantly under surveillance. And John was probably right the first time when he went over there that he heard some rustling in the bushes and all that. That people were probably watching him while they were.
Yeah, I would expect so. I don't think that the farm is completely unsurveilled.
No.
In fact, there's sheep up there in the video. You can kind of see them. So somebody's taking care of sheep going right up to Billy's farm there.
All right, let's move to slide number 14. And so 14 shows the farm to the upper center, and then we have the berm. What are we focusing on here?
Well, in this particular slide, the picture, I highlighted the contours of the Pewall burn, and the property is called Argyll Butte, but probably John can pronounce it better than I do. But this is where that stream is, and it wasn't at first. It didn't run all the way back to the farm, so it has been adjusted.
Okay, so this goes back to what you said before, Tani, that this stream appears to have been created post-1920.
Part of it, because it now goes directly towards behind the farm, and it didn't earlier.
All right, so then we have this slide on slide number 15, and who wants to take us through this?
Well, maybe Stephen can do that.
No, I'll let you do it. You're doing a great job. I just think it's interesting. This is from 1888, still showing the stone there. And I wanted to mention one quick thing. I was starting to think that on the History Channel, they had that show Finding Hitler. I was just thinking Finding Paul would be a great History Channel show. Bring ground penetrating radar up there, and you got it completely solved, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Where's Waldo?
Yeah.
All right, so this is Hyde Park, 1888. So this is an old map.
It's the oldest one I can find, Mike.
Okay, and the standing stone is there.
Yeah.
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 And what I think is interesting about that, it still shows the farm there. And what is the dotted line again on the right, Tony? Is that maybe a tunnel again, maybe going to that area?
Could be. I'm not sure, Stephen. It could also be the original Poobah burn.
Yeah, the stream. Okay.
Yeah, the stream. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's what it looks like to me. It looks like it could possibly be the stream. So, because if we go back to the previous image, here we go. Here's the stream, right? And then we have, I would say that that's probably the stream.
Yeah, good spotting, Mike. That's what I think too. Yeah.
All right. So, to recap, folks, two maps, one from 1920, and the standing stone is there, and a map from 1888, and the standing stone is there. And there it is. There it is in all its glory. There's the standing stone.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is a picture that John took, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this is not something off the internet. This is John when he was there the first time. And then we have an image of the farm itself. And how recent is this picture?
That was last year's.
This was last year. Okay. And Tony, I see 3 red doors.
Yeah, well, 3 red doors. But I think my point of interest goes to the red door on this little barn. By the looks of it, it's not older than maybe, let's say, 40 or 45 years. It wasn't always there. It wasn't an original part of the farm.
Okay, so as you mentioned earlier, there appears to have been an addition to the farm at some point. We don't know when.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not recent, but it's probably, like you said, maybe 40 or 50 years. Which door would represent the new part, Tony? The one on the left, the center, or the right here?
My guess would be that one where you have your mouse, where you have your cursor right now. Yeah.
Right here, so on the right.
Yep.
Is that the door that the pyramid of 49 meters, the center line, goes to?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the sort of like the capstone, so to say.
So we're saying that red door is right here at the center base of the pyramid.
That's 100% correct, Mike. Yeah.
And so what I deduct from that, of course it's a guess, but I deduct that that's a new entrance inside of that building and it's more secure now. It's more locked up and underground. It's probably a hatch door or a spiral staircase. Who knows what's under their elevator if they're high tech, but it goes under the ground, we believe now.
Now, some people might argue, they might say, well, maybe you guys, this center line is not 49 meters. Maybe you should have stopped at the base. Some people watching it are going to make that argument. But the point being is that if this standing stone is somehow attached to this farmhouse, then to me it would make sense to draw the line to the farmhouse.
Right.
Yep.
Right? Because what it's saying is the farmhouse and the standing stone, there is a relationship.
Absolutely.
All right. So if we go to this, here's John. He's memorialized. He will forever be the person known as the guy that got to the standing stone. And we've shown that before. And now we get to the number 49.
Hey, Mike, could you go back to that for 1 minute? The red triangle is kind of like a heat signature coming from underneath the ground. The grass around that kind of curls up in a triangle shape there.
It's also darker. It's also darker, Stephen. Where John has his right foot on there. Inside the red markings, there is the grass was somehow, for one reason or another, is darker over there than the rest.
Yeah, it's at a right angle right here.
Yeah.
The grass, right? John, when you were standing in this spot, did you feel like your left foot was elevated a bit? Because it almost looks like there is some kind of elevation. No?
No, I didn't notice nothing.
Okay. All right. So it's just flat. Maybe it's just the way it looks. But the darker area here, the grass, it does look like it's at a right angle, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, it is.
Let's move to slide number 19 and the number 49. And Steve, did you want to tell us about the number 49? We already covered that the number 4, Paul, P-A-U-L, 9 letters in McCartney, 49. So what else do we want to know about the number 49?
If you can read it, Mike, because it's so small on my screen here, if you'd like to read it.
Okay, it says Paul McCartney equals 49. Angel number 49 is a message of congratulations from your angels for all of your diligence and hard work. Through discipline and practicality, you are on the cusp of realizing your soul's mission and fulfilling your higher potential. And then it goes on to say that what does number 49 mean? Well, this angelic number has some special powers. Although it seems just as any other number, put in its angelic context, it means a lot. Number 49 is a symbol of security and progress in the first place. It represents continuity, steadiness, tradition, patriotism, and persistence. So I guess we can lay that up against what Paul McCartney means from the standpoint of Paulism as a new way of moving forward. Basically, Paulism is a new way of moving forward. It's changing and transforming the old and bringing in the new.
Right.
Right? That's the premise behind Paulism, a very simplified version of it, folks, but I have some other videos which explain it. Also, the number 49 reduces to 13, which then reduces to 1 plus 3, which equals 4. And I won't get into a lot of detail with this, but in memoirs, we are told about how the number 4 relates to the 4 Beatles. It relates to the 4 suits of a playing card deck. Also the tarot deck, and it has biblical significance going to the book of Revelation. The 49 itself means something, but my own interpretation, just on the fly here, knowing that it also reduces to the number 4, also has some occult significance as well. Okay, so slide 21.
That's the flower bed.
That's the flower bed. Okay, so the flower bed, folks, if we look at the bottom right, we see this rectangle down here, bottom right. And then it's been enlarged. So this is the flower bed here, and it is a rectangle.
With the contours of the Pubal burn stream running right to the right of it.
You know, what I think is so great about what Tony did here, especially in these 2 photos, is John and I were trying to figure out where those tulips were planted that we think are tulips. Could be poppies or something, I don't know, whatever they are. Some kind of bulb plant, though. Now we've pinpointed where it is. So we know exactly where it is on that farm.
Yeah.
That's a great thing, and we didn't have that before. While I got you guys on the slide to the left, you know, I even start to see stuff when we're doing a presentation, but are the trees to the right of that rectangle, are they planted in a Hofner base style? I swear. I even see the bridge at the bottom of the base, like it was an upright base or a Hofner base. I almost see it, especially in the large one.
Oh, my God. I think you're right.
Am I making it? Maybe I'm reaching too far out, but, you know.
Maybe that's where they got the idea to put the bass at the bottom of the Sgt. Pepper album.
Probably true, yeah.
With the 3 strings, you know?
Yeah.
That's very funny, Steve. But you know what? Who knows?
You never know.
Who knows? All right. Good one. All right. So slide number 22, we've got, this is very interesting. So we have Linda and Paul. Linda's on the left, I guess. Paul's on the right. They're on horses. And somebody took a picture of them. Maybe Linda had it timed or whatever on her camera and took a picture of them riding away. But the picture is being taken as if it's somebody who's lying in the ground or lying on the ground.
Watching over his grave.
Yeah, let me tell you where I got that from. I think it was from, it's on YouTube. Yeah, I think it's from the Admiral Halsey video.
Yeah. At
the very end of the video, all of a sudden it shows them riding the horses, and then it pans down to ground level. And of course, I'm seeing like either tulips or they look like poppies to me because I'm in that field of business. But you know, it's something flowering there of the same type, and they're just in one little condensed area, as you can see.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, why would you take a picture like this unless you were looking to convey a message?
Yeah. It's the end of the video. They're trying to tell you something. So I believe that's the area that we were just showing. That area.
It's almost like if you're buried and you're lying in the ground and you pick your head up.
You look.
This is what you see, right? Oh, boy. All right. I think that wraps up our section on the standing stone, and then Steve, you want to get into human sacrifice. And I know that you and I have messaged back and forth a couple of times, and you have said that a lot of people have a very difficult time getting their heads wrapped around human sacrifice. They just don't think that it's something that's real. It's just something that doesn't happen. And again, it's like everything else. It is real. It does happen. But in order to understand it, you actually have to do the legwork and the research and the homework to look into the fact that it exists and it has been around for a very, very long time.
Correct.
It's not something that's new. It's not something that was just created or discussed when we started talking about the death of Paul McCartney.
No, it goes way back.
Goes way, way back, way back.
Yep.
So, all right. So here we have the splash screen, and we have that's John Bonham at the left, and we have Jimi Hendrix, we have Brian Jones, and Janis Joplin. All four were sacrifices.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, folks, the sacrifice comes when you're looking for the fame and fortune. And essentially, it's called selling your soul, deal with the devil, Faustian bargain, pick your term. And essentially what happens is you go to the crossroads. And we'll talk about the crossroads in a moment with Robert Johnson. And essentially you get your life script rewritten.
Yeah.
But here's the thing with ritual, and here's the thing with magic and all that. If you want to receive, you've got to give. It's not a one-way street. So if you want something, you've got to give something in return. And so for celebrities and entertainers and artists that have made the deal, they've made the pact, they have to give something.
Yeah.
And for a lot of them, it is they give up their life at an early age. For others, they live a long life, but they've got to continue to work on behalf of what Bob Dylan referred to as the chief commander for a very, very long time. This is why we see Billy still cranking it out at 84 years old. It's why we have Mick Jagger still cranking it out, and Bob Dylan, Def Leppard. All of these bands that continue to have to perform, you either have a short life and you're told that you're going to have a legacy that's going to have longevity. Paul McCartney as an example, Brian Jones as an example, Jimi Hendrix, John Bonham, Kurt Cobain, Janis Joplin, right? Everybody knows who these people are because their legacy has continued.
Yeah.
That was part of the deal. You're going to die, but your legacy is going to continue. And by the way, I think a lot of them that make this deal don't really understand the implications. I'm convinced of that. And I don't believe they know when their time is going to be up. I don't want to digress here and take away from your presentation. So, in any case.
Hey, before you go past this slide, Ralph created this, and that triangle logo at the top is from Memoirs, and it's usually as a note.
Yes.
And, it's in a triangle shape, and I believe it's showing Paul McCartney's eye, the Eye of Horus. And something that the informer told me is that the real Paul McCartney, you could see him, because there was doubles for Paul McCartney. We won't get too far into that here, but the one that is real had a higher arched eyebrow like this, very similar to the Eye of Horus from the Egyptian times. But, Billy uses this as the logo, or Tom used it as a logo for the Memoirs books. And it fits right into this whole triangle thing you're going to see coming up.
Okay, let me just pull something up here real quick. All right, so when we talk about the eye within the pyramid, this is something that's on my first album. And a lot of people believe that this is all evil symbolism, and it's not. It's ancient symbolism. It's a sacred geometry. That's what it is. It goes back to the ancient mystery religions. So the pyramid with the eye is the very center of the double star of the Sefer Yetzirah. In the middle of the double star is the center triangle, which represents air, water, and fire. The Holy Trinity and the creative principle. The eye represents the creator. These sacred symbols, this is what I have on my website, have been misused by the controllers and people with negative intent. Okay? So the point I wanted to make is when we see the eye in the center of the triangle, the triangle itself represents air, water, and fire, and it also represents the Holy Trinity and the creative principle. And the eye represents the Creator, represents God, it represents the source.
Symbol's also on the dollar bill, isn't it? On the back of it.
Yep. It's the eye of providence. It's referred to as the eye of providence, the all-seeing eye, but it's the Creator within the triangle. Okay, so, all right. So then this slide here, we talk about the devil legend, which is the crossroads, and I mentioned Robert Johnson. And Steve, what do we want to know about Robert Johnson?
Yeah, from what the legend goes, and, people can read that on the right, but, he met up with the devil at the crossroads. He was in the form of a black man, a large black man, it says, and he had a guitar with him. Actually, I think he had a guitar with him, if I can recall correctly.
Well, Robert Johnson brought the guitar, yeah.
Yeah, Robert Johnson brought it. And he was asked, the man that was supposedly the devil in that form, he started to play it, or he tuned it, I believe. I believe he tuned it. And when he gave it back to Robert Johnson, after that, he was able to play unbelievable, for his time period. People like Eric Clapton have done a ton of his songs, J.J. Cale. A lot of people have done his songs. Before that, I watched a documentary about Robert Johnson, and he wasn't much of anything before that. After he made the deal at the crossroads, he all of a sudden became more of a legend back then.
Right. And at the bottom of his slide, folks, it says, in exchange for his soul, Johnson was able to create the blues for which he became famous. And I was watching a documentary about Bob Dylan, and there were people that knew Dylan back in the day, in the very early days when he got started. And they said, Dylan was not a very good guitar player. He couldn't play harmonica. And then they believed that Dylan went to the crossroads as well. And when he came back, all of a sudden, he's writing these songs with these great lyrics. He's playing the harmonica. And, of course, his career took off. And then, of course, we have the famous interview that he did with Ed Bradley on 60 Minutes.
Yeah, where he telling that he made a deal with the chief commander, didn't he?
Yeah, and he said he made the deal with the chief commander, and he's upholding his side of the bargain. That was a very, very telling interview, and I thought that Dylan really spilled the beans with that interview.
And, whether people like it or not, Billy was or is a better musician than Paul ever was.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Tony. Right now, a bunch of people are just screaming at their monitor because you said that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, the thing is, I've talked about this too. People are just going to believe what they want to believe.
But if you look at the facts, Mike, well, I don't like to say this as you pointed out, but it's true. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He knows how to write and to read music. Well, Paul didn't, did he?
No. And of course, and let's put it this way. Let's just forget about what I have shown. The Beatles themselves have said that they were not virtuosos on their instruments.
They were. They did.
Right? This is not us saying that. They have said this. Lennon has said it. Paul McCartney or Billy has said it.
George.
Yeah, George has said it. I mean, and this is not like us passing judgment. They have owned up to this. And the thing is, though, that people have created their own narrative based upon their worship and what they want to believe.
Yep.
So what happens is when they tell you that they're not virtuosos, when John Lennon tells you this, when John Lennon tells you that he was really quite embarrassed by his guitar playing, I had that in my presentation on whether they wrote all their own music. John is telling you, but people tune it out. They don't want to hear that piece of it.
No.
They only want to hear that they were great, that they were geniuses, that they were brilliant. That's all they want to hear. And so they formulate an entire belief system around that.
Right.
And that becomes their narrative.
Unfortunately, they're playing right into Paulism. If you think about it, they're playing right into that whole worship thing that they wanted. They're doing exactly what they wanted.
Yes. They're actually creating a narrative that contradicts what their gods are telling them.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So John Lennon, the God for so many people, is telling you, I was not a great guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
And the worshipers will say, John Lennon was a great guitar player. Right? Think about that.
Yeah.
One of the most influential guitar players ever.
Yeah, exactly. So in any case, we won't go down that path because this is not what this is about. People who want to learn more about this can go watch my presentation on it. So we have, Robert Johnson goes to the crossroads. It's also known as a deal with the devil, the Faustian bargain. And I did a short presentation on what Memoirs tells us about McCartney and Lennon's deal, their Faustian bargain, which went back to October of 1963.
Yeah.
So, and as we mentioned, this is not something that is new. So, Steve, you have some slides here that you put together that have to do with Stonehenge. And so what do we want to know about Stonehenge and what some people are theorizing?
Yeah, what I want to start off with it, and I didn't put a slide of it in there, because I myself am a Christian, Catholic actually, and Jesus himself was the ultimate sacrifice. He sacrificed himself for our sins, an atonement to God for us. And if you think about Abraham, too, in the Bible, I didn't put this in his slides, but, he was ready to sacrifice his own son to God. So the sacrifices go way, way back. They're just ancient, and then to the Druid times. And Stonehenge is that large circle of stones. They're saying there's chambers under there, too, and there was evidence of sacrifices there. So they're going way, way back with this whole sacrificial thing. And I believe there's sacrifices to the devil, on a constant basis still to this day. That's my feeling about it. From what I've researched, it got very dark for me to even look into this.
It is dark, and I said that I have certain lines that I have drawn where I won't get into stuff that is too dark.
Your video that you did before this, I was saying, dang, he took my thunder away. But then when I saw it, you did like a short video on it, and I thought it was great, and I especially loved the part you did with, what's the name of the guy at the end you had a video of? I'm not a big fan of him, but...
Oh, Marilyn Manson. Yeah, that's the thing. This darkness, this evil,
yeah, this
exists. And if you spend too much time with your head buried in it, it is going to have a negative effect on you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It will. And that's why with me, I will talk about it to the degree where I get the information out.
Yeah.
And I make people aware that it is out there. But I'm not going to major in it. I'm just not going to do that.
I was hesitant to even do a video on it. I really feel like it needs to be out there because I don't think everybody's seeing it. And it's going on to this day, and the music industry and the sports industries are just filled with it. I mean, I could have put up thousands of slides. I know I sent you more, Mike, and we can only fit so much in here. It'd be like 5-6 hours.
Right.
The amount of things in there with triangles, one eye, members of bands that have been sacrificed is just chilling. I looked into it, and I even sent you some the other day, Mike, and I'm saying, should we put these in? And there's just so much you can put in. But I'm talking everybody. Any band that's made it fairly big, or even a single singer, it's happened to, and then somebody that's close to them is sacrificed.
Yeah, and when you take a look at, Steve, the ages that these people pass away at, right? So let's just use some examples here. We know about the 27 Club.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney died at 24.
Yeah.
We have people that die at 65, another occulted number because it reduces to 11, 66, 69,
yeah,
72, 77. Chuck Berry died at 90. There are patterns to these numbers, right? And even if it's not the age that they died at, in other words, the age doesn't blare out some occult meaning, under the covers, there are numbers connected to points in time. So in other words, they made their pact on this day and they died on this day. And the number of days in between when they made the pact and their death, that's the numerology. That's the gematria. That's the numbers that count.
Yep.
Right? So it's not just the age, although many times I pick up on the ages. I'm like, oh, okay. Eddie Van Halen.
Eddie Van Halen, yeah.
Right? I think Eddie died at 65 or 66 years old. Let me just take a quick look. Hold on one second.
65, I believe he did, yeah.
Yeah, he died at age 65. 6 plus 5 equals 11. Linda McCartney died at age 56. 5 plus 6 equals 11. And by the way, I believe that part of Billy's deal, part of his pact, rolled into his wife.
Yeah.
Linda dying at 56. And with Eric Clapton, we have his son Connor.
Oh, God, yeah.
There's also another band member, too, that you'll see coming up because I featured him.
Yes.
But, yeah, it could have been that, too. What some people may argue about, well, they got cancer, some of them, like Linda or even Eddie Van Halen, I think it was throat cancer. But nobody actually really knows, how they actually died, I believe.
Well, here's the thing, too, and I've explained this to folks. People think that a sacrifice means that you're going to get a stake pounded through your heart.
Right.
Right? That's what they think. They watch too many movies. The way this thing works is it's embedded in your fate. It's embedded in your timeline. Once you make the deal,
Yep.
Something's going to happen that's going to bring an end to your life at a certain point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Right? So it could be a car accident. It could be drugs. It could be suicide. Something happens. Freddie Mercury of Queen. He was the sacrifice for the band Queen. And Freddie died from AIDS. So the point being is that the way it's put together is the person dies from something that people would expect people to die from.
Yeah.
Because if it didn't work that way, especially in modern times, and they found people die, they died because somebody slit their throat, somebody put a stake through them, somebody hit them in the head with a hammer, whatever, people would step back and say, well, that's not right.
Right.
Something has to be up here. What's going on? These people are being murdered. That's what people would say. So it's done in a way so that it looks very natural.
Yeah.
In some cases, it is murder, though, I believe, too.
Oh, it could be, yes. Like in the case of Kurt Cobain, we talked about that stuff, right?
Exactly. Yep. Even Paul McCartney, I believe he was murdered. That's just me, but
yes, but also in the Paul is Dead circles, how is it painted? It's painted as a car accident.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Kurt Cobain was presented as a suicide, even though the way his body was found, the gun and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The private investigator that was looking into the case said there was absolutely no way that man shot himself.
Correct, yeah.
So the person either dies from some disease or some accident, or if they were murdered and taken out, the way it is presented to the public seems innocuous from the standpoint of it doesn't seem nefarious.
Right.
Right.
Suicide, car crash,
Yeah.
those types of things there. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, you are.
Dying in a bathtub, dying in an elevator,
Yeah, they tie it. I mean, they tie it to drug use, alcohol use, suicide, Elvis. Yeah, we can go on and on and on. In fact, it's really funny. We're all coming up with different names. Look, there was a point in time when I believed that, the guy died from a drug overdose. That's the story. That's the narrative that goes out. And again, Kurt Cobain is the one that I always go back to because, I watched that whole documentary, and I forgot the name of the documentary, but
Soaked in bleach. Yeah.
Soaked in bleach. That's right. And the private investigator came back and said, "There's no way. There's no way that man shot himself."
No.
It's like Vince Foster, going back to the Clinton days.
Oh, yeah.
Found in a park, and they said that Vince Foster killed himself. And then police and investigators who looked at the crime scene said there was no way that guy shot himself there. That they concluded, well, those that were brave enough to talk about it, that his body was dragged there after he was killed, and a gun was placed to make it look like he shot himself.
Yeah. What about Heather when she's ranting with that reporter, and she says they almost they drove me to committing suicide and all that. They make you crazy. They warp you or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bunch of gaslighting goes on. So okay. Anyway, so we digressed there a little bit, but it was a good digress. In this particular slide, Steve, what I noticed is this person presents the possibility of Stonehenge being an area where they did sacrifices, blood sacrifices, but he leaves it kind of open. In other words, he doesn't say, I believe that. He just presents the possibility that Stonehenge could have been used for human sacrifice.
Yeah. People have said it's an astronomical thing, and it can be. What I think is interesting is the standing stone is from the Druid pagan times. And, they say in here, it says the slaughtering stone. It always seems to involve, these monuments have something underneath them, a slaughtering area or, something. I mean, you can even read what it says there in that top paragraph on the left.
Yeah, by the 19th century, one recumbent stone at Stonehenge had acquired the name the slaughtering stone because the hollows on its upper surface fill with rainwater that turns red, supposedly from the blood of the victim sacrificed upon it, but in fact due to iron in the stone and a particular algae. But in any case, this particular article, like I said, he presents the argument, but he doesn't conclude that that's indeed what Stonehenge could have possibly been used for, which is okay. Okay, so they're just presenting the theory. So in the next slide, this is interesting because this one says Germany's, quote, Stonehenge reveals evidence of human sacrifice. So this one's a little different. This one says, actually, we believe there is evidence that Germany's Stonehenge, human sacrifice did take place. It starts by saying archaeologists uncovered the remains of 10 women and children who may have been sacrificed at the Palmette, I hope I pronounced that correctly, enclosure at a 4,300-year-old Neolithic circle. And what does that circle look like? And on slide number 28, we can see what they refer to as the bloodied stones, a druidic circle.
Yeah, Billy's Standing Stone. It's from those times, too. So I believe it's got chambers underneath it, like I've always said.
Yeah. All right, slide number 29, human sacrifices, and it talks about the Inca child mummies. So it says from prehistory to the 21st century, human sacrifice has been practiced around the world by numerous cultures. So there we go. I just stated flat out. Live Science takes a look at 25 cultures that practice or still practice human sacrifice. And then to the right, it says the Inca flourished during the 15th century AD, conquering large swaths of territory in the Andes and connecting it with a vast system of roads. The Inca also practiced child sacrifice. Their mummies have been found by archaeologists, often near the summit of mountains or volcanoes.
Yep.
So whereas the previous articles were just presenting the theory and the possibilities, this one is telling us factually that this did go on.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's all different countries, Mike. It's all over the place, for these sacrifices.
And, of course, all of this always goes back to the Egyptian mysteries and Osiris. And Osiris was the judge of the dead and the underworld and the agency that granted all life, including sprouting vegetation and the fertile flooding of the Nile River. He was described as he who is permanently benign and youthful and the Lord of silence. So anything you wanted to add, Steve, about Osiris?
Just, that he's the judge of the underworld. And, of course, Billy had that same staff in a lot of his photos, the shepherd's crook there. So, he's tied into Osiris big time, Billy is, I believe.
Yeah, he goes back to the Egyptian mysteries,
yeah.
As does Aleister Crowley or Crowley, depending upon how you want to pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
It all goes back to Egypt. Egypt Station.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move to the next slide. And this is from Memoirs.
Correct.
And I'll read this. It says, the Beatles, Stones, and other bands used Satanism, as I have already explained, to help connect us to the fully global network. It was because of the relationship with the network that EMI had already established that we were able to get the help required for our success through the Illuminati. I also revealed our band's Masonic symbolism, especially on Sgt. Pepper, which was to let the world know our sponsors. And then in the bolded out letters, it says the Beatles used Satanism because of the Illuminati. And this is the word stacking, the encoding in Memoirs. This is the second layer of encoding. The third layer is the acrostical code. The first layer is just reading the book the way it is. So here it is. Billy's telling us via Tom, the Beatles used Satanism because of the Illuminati.
Yeah, and the Satanism has a lot to do with these rituals they do and the sacrifices themselves, I believe.
We will get more into that in upcoming slides because you found some excellent material from Newsweek of all places.
Yeah, I know.
And we'll take a look at that. So this is from page 272 from Memoirs. And again, folks, when you read the memoirs of Billy Shears or Billy's Back, actually this is from Billy's Back, page numbers are significant. In this case, we see page 272. So 272.
Which regroups to 11.
Regroups to 11. That's right. So the way Tom did this was very important information is found on pages which regroup to certain numbers like 9 and 11, 33, and so on.
Right.
Which would be 6. All right. So I'll read this. When Paul wrote of the submarine predicting his death, The sub, as is car and coffin, was yellow as a symbol of ripeness, like a banana. They began recording Yellow Submarine in May. Donovan's song Mellow Yellow extended the idea. Donovan also wrote the submarine line, Sky of Blue, Sea of Green. It refers to being buried under grass as opposed to under the deep blue sea.
Right.
Don, he's referring to Donovan, understood the song completely. See the burial mound of ground taking the place of water over the submarine on the original Yellow Submarine album cover. The casket-like craft is buried down under the dirt hill that the new Fab Four stands upon, whereas Paul's burial, as he predicted it, would not be in the water. The lyrics refer to the land of submarines, a cemetery of subs. As it happened, he did not end up in a public cemetery.
I'm stunned. I'm just absolutely stunned. So,
Yeah, I was stunned by this too, and I'll tell you why. I didn't even read this passage. Like, I read all the memoirs, but when I did that whole thing with the standing stone on the submarine cover, I don't even remember reading this, or if it was in my subconscious mind. But when I read this, it's basically giving you a treasure map right there. I mean, that's telling you right there. It's crazy.
And he's also telling us in this little passage here, Donovan also wrote the submarine line, Sky of Blue, Sea of Green. What is he telling us? Donovan was either the writer or co-writer of the song Yellow Submarine.
Yep.
right.
We're all to believe that the Beatles sat down and they wrote Yellow Submarine, that Paul McCartney wrote it. Well, Billy's telling us here that Donovan, in all likelihood, wrote the lyrics to Yellow Submarine. On the right-hand side of the slide, it says, from Billy's back, page 133, Abraham took the ram by the horns and offered him in his son's place. My Ram album cover shows a ram caught by his horns. That ram is me, offered up in Paul's place, being entreated to suffer for Paul. However, I am also the one holding the horns. I am the shepherd. I am Ram. I have the beast by the horns, but also I am the beast. And Billy tells us that the Ram album, if we take a look at the title, it's all capitalized, R-A-M, replacing A. McCartney.
Yeah.
Right.
This is another example where Billy's talking about sacrifice. He's clearly portraying occulted symbolism, occulted meaning.
You know, and the devil is often called the beast, you know.
Right. This is what I was talking about before. So this you got from Newsweek. The cult of celebrity is as old as humanity itself.
Yeah.
So I guess you guys want me to read this?
Yeah.
So this comes to us from Newsweek. And as I mentioned, of all places, you would not expect this type of article in Newsweek. But this goes to the whole concept of Paulism, folks. So this was a great find, Steve. Nothing seems more modern than society's relentless obsession with reality show stars, Hollywood tweets, and tabloid scandals. But a wildly entertaining new book by former Daily Telegraph literary editor Tom Paine suggests that our celebrity culture has rather odd roots. In Fame, Paine draws provocative parallels between 21st century stardom and the ancient Greeks, Romans, and Aztecs to explore how the fame game has evolved over the millennia. Celebrity worship reflects a primal need that's been present since the Babylonians to elevate people to the status of mythic heroes, only to destroy them. It suits us when fame comes at a price, Paine writes. Or as the Greeks put it, the only place to go from the top of fortune's wheel is down. Achilles, hero of the Trojan War, had to choose between a long, anonymous life or a short, glorious one. Think about what they're telling us here, folks. Achilles, hero of the Trojan War, had to choose between a long, anonymous life or a short, glorious one.
Right.
27 Club, as an example, right? That would be the short, glorious one.
Yep.
Right.
There's no middle ground. A hero must either go out in a blaze of glory or else disappoint us. Of course, we prefer our famous go out while they're on top. In fact, dying young and publicly may be the best way to ensure mythical status. Think James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, JFK, Kurt Cobain. Heath Ledger's overdose clinched him a posthumous Oscar. Naturally, Paine sees a classical parallel. Early Christian martyrs, knowing they draw huge crowds to their executions, embrace death to gain acclaim and spread their religious message. So I guess he's referring to Jesus in that particular little paragraph there.
Right.
There's another more gruesome precedent for the fame cycle, ritual sacrifice. Payne cleverly juxtaposes Britney Spears' head-shaving meltdown with the myth of Iphigenia, who was purportedly killed so that the Greek ships could sail to Troy, and who became very famous because of it. Both the ancient maiden and the modern pop stars show that we've always wanted our celebrities to be complicit in our own destruction. Audiences need to believe that the celebrity was willing to choose such a life and accepts the inevitable trade-offs, loss of privacy, potential public humiliation, even untimely death that go along with it. So what is the allure with fame? The lifestyle for one thing. In the Faust legend, the doctor agrees to sell his soul to the devil, but in return gets all of his wishes granted for 24 years. Paul McCartney died at what, 24?
Died at 24, yes.
In both ancient Albania and Mesoamerica, slaves and youth selected as human sacrifices were often entertained in massive splendor. Nowadays, MTV allows the Jersey Shore kids to party themselves sick with the explicit understanding that they will pay back the network by self-destructing for the cameras. The promise of immortality is another incentive, said Payne. So he's talking about public humiliation, he's talking about loss of privacy, and even untimely death. And that with the Faust legend, the doctor agreed to sell his soul to the devil, but in return gets all of his wishes granted for 24 years. This is mainstream article stuff, folks. This is not Mike and Steve and Tani and John and Ralph making stuff up. I always try to tell folks it's hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
That's why when I do my presentations, most of the time, I will insert mainstream articles to show that they are telling you the truth, but it's hidden in plain sight. What happens is people just gloss over it. It's like the example I used earlier when I said that John Lennon tells us in an interview that he was embarrassed by his guitar playing. He did not consider himself to be a great guitar player. But what does the worshiping congregation do? They ignore that. And they actually create something that doesn't exist because the god themselves, the celebrity, is telling you that I'm not this, I'm not that. But somehow the congregation creates a personality, a persona that is godlike, a great guitar player, a great actor, a great entertainer, even though many times they're telling us that this is not the case. It's very weird. It's a very, very strange psychological dynamic. Would you guys agree that takes place?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
It's very weird. It's very, very weird. So on slide 35, we've seen this before. So, Steve, why don't you explain what you're seeing? Because I've taken my audience through this plenty of times. So maybe if they hear it from you, maybe it'll click for more people.
The reason I put the one on the left in is because it starts off with the whole occulted, half-face thing. I have a lady on my site, The Many Faces of Billy Shepherd, the Facebook site I have, and she'll argue with me they were just trying to be cool with the half-face, half-lit. It was just like something being cool. And it's really not, and you're going to see that in just about every slide coming up. And there's thousands more I could show people, but, there's not enough room or time in the show. I mean, this is being done for a purpose, the half-lit face. And on the right, this is Billy's new interview he did with
Rick Rubin.
Yeah, Rick Rubin. Yeah.
Rick Rubin.
I actually enjoyed it. Some people are making fun of it, but I thought it was good. But, one of the advertisements here shows the pyramid again, pyramid symbolism.
Yeah. So let me just make a comment. When people look at stuff like with the Beatles album cover, and you have one eye, it's one eye symbolism, folks.
Yes, it is. Yep.
It's one eye symbolism.
Their own explanation was, we just like black and white pictures. But it's obviously deliberately done.
Or the person who's commenting on Steve's page saying it's just artistic.
Oh, God, no.
Like, folks, look, you've got to get past this.
Yeah.
If you're looking at an album cover like this, with all of the evidence that's out there today about all of the occult symbolism, I have showed it over and over and over again in my presentations on the Beatles. But it's not just the Beatles.
No.
If you really want to understand the truth, if you want to say that you're a truth seeker, and that you really want to understand what's going on in this reality, And who controls this reality? Signs and symbols rule the world.
Yeah.
Not words, not laws.
Right.
Signs and symbols. So, and we're going to get more into this. With the Beatles album cover is one-eye symbolism, period. Any other way you want to interpret this, you're interpreting it from a position of unknowing.
Yep.
You're making it up.
Yeah,
From a romantic point of view or something like that. But romanticism has got nothing to do with reality, and this is reality what you see.
Exactly, Tony. They romanticize.
Yeah.
The Beatles can't be in the occult. Oh, they can't be involved in that. That's dark.
No, they're playing into Paulism, like I said. They don't want to think their idols had a dark side to them.
Exactly. And even if the Beatles themselves weren't fully aware of what they were connected into, the truth of the matter is the people that were managing this psychological operation, the people that were managing this Tavistock project knew very well what they were.
Oh, yeah. They were just 22, 23-year-old kids back then. So what do you know at that age?
Right. But young guys that were caught many, many times, once you take a look, involved in all of the symbolism. And somebody could argue, well, they were told to do that. But when you take a look at all of the Masonic hand gestures, Tony,
Yeah.
Lennon was making, Biological Paul was making, George wearing the top hat. The top hat is another Masonic symbol that goes back to, I guess it was help. I mean, these are just some of the examples that off the top of my head. But the point being here is, if you really want to understand how this world works, you have to understand the signs and symbols.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, Mike, in the beginning, we were all Beatle fans. You know, we all were.
We all were. Exactly. And this is not, look, people say to me, well, you know, you're destroying their legacy. You're out there to destroy, you know, the Beatles and what they represent. No, I'm not. I was a Beatle worshiper. I was in the church.
Me too.
I had a front row pew.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I had to swallow a very, very hard pill.
Yep, it was.
Yeah, that's the thing. You either want to look at reality of what people think is not reality, but it is reality. And one of the reasons I did this is after I started looking at album covers, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And it's at least on one album of a famous thing, either a single musician or a group.
Right.
And there's always somebody that dies. I swear to God.
Oh, yeah, it's all over the place. Yeah, absolutely.
People looked at this video. I challenge them to go look at every album cover, through every album cover that's ever been made by anybody that's famous. And they're going to see the same thing. It's not just to be cool. It's amazing. You know, I was blown away by it. That's why I wanted to do this.
Yeah, so we're going to go through the rest of these pictures. And just moving over to the image on the right, you know, Billy with Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
Folks, do you think that the big pyramid that they're standing in the middle of is just what? Artistic?
Oh, it just happens. We took a photo and it just happens to be there. Get out of here. No way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of artistic, creative thing that's behind it, yes, as far as how they've framed the picture.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that pyramid means something. And Billy is in the center of that pyramid with Rick Rubin. By the way, I was told by somebody who's in the music business that Rick Rubin's spiritual inclinations, I'll just put it this way, they're not Christian.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Okay? I was told this, all right? So I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not going to say any more about it. These are two very good images, Steve, that you guys have put together here because, again, you know, this is not coincidence. It's not happenstance. All of this stuff is presented for a reason. Okay, so let's go move to the next slide. And, oh, what do we have here? I guess this is a coincidence, too.
Yeah.
This was my favorite band back then. I absolutely saw them maybe 5-6 times. And I never would have thought Sting and the Police were into this occult thing. I can't fathom it because he's always, you know, Sting himself is always humanitarian. You know, he's out in the rainforest. And I just couldn't imagine him being a part of this. You know, and there's the big triangle there, the half-lit faces. And there's another very important thing, Stephen. There's another very important thing. Every single dad of those who were in the police have significant positions within the government and all that. So either military backgrounds or government backgrounds, they all have it.
Or there's some kind of ambassador like Sting has become, right?
And Bono,
yeah.
Yeah, and they did lose a member, too. If you look to the right, he was an early band member. He's like a roadie, but he was also played with them. So I believe that one's the sacrifice. If I were to guess, that's where that came from.
Kim Turner.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so there we go again. I mean, here in the previous slide, we showed the Beatles with the one-eyed symbolism. One half of the face is shadowed out.
Yeah.
And here we have the Police.
Yep.
The same thing.
All is the same.
It reminds me a little bit of the Revolver album. Now Sting is looking away, whilst on your Revolver album, Paul McCartney is looking away from the rest of it. See?
Yeah, looking to the left, which could represent the left-handed path.
Yeah.
I was just kind of sad when I saw this because they were my favorite band. I could never imagine them in something dark like this. And I read, I guess Sting was a school teacher. He had a bad family life. I read his autobiography. He had a weird life, kind of like the Beatles did almost, His father was either a milkman or a shipbuilder, and the mother cheated on him, and Sting saw that. And he didn't have much fame. He was a school teacher back then. He was really a nobody, and he was in a Who film, Quadrophenia, he was in there. So I don't know when he made the pact, but he definitely made the pact, and I didn't think he would have, So, just to me, though.
I don't believe a lot of their backstories, Steve. I think a lot of these backstories are fabricated.
Yeah.
I really do. Because when you look at a lot of them, they always come from some background where they're struggling.
Yeah.
The father's not there. The mother's not there. There's a thread. There's a pattern with a lot of these stories, these backstories that they give us about their childhood and growing up and everything else. I'm not saying everything in the backstory is false or fiction, but I do believe that a lot of it is contrived. All right, let's move to the next slide. Slide number 37. We have Crowded House. And what do we want to know about Crowded House, Steve?
Well, I really like this band. They weren't around for an extremely long time. But if you look on the curtains to the left, you're going to see the one-eyed pyramid again, in the curtains itself on the left. And then the guy that actually died, he's up almost like on a cross floating above it. And you've got the Illuminati or Masonic floor there, on the bottom, the checker floor.
Yep, and he's got wings.
They were a great band, and then they lost a member also. Pretty young, too.
And then the next slide we have, what? Elton John? One-eyed symbolism again.
Yeah, dark lit, one-eyed symbolism. And I thought, I didn't know a member of his band died. He was fairly old when you look at 56, but like you said, some of these dates come up all different times. It's not necessarily 27 or 24. It's all over the place.
5 plus 6 comes down to 11.
Yeah, 56 is 11. And like I said, the calculations, numbers-wise, is not always just the age. It has to do with when you made the pact and when you die. So what are the numbers in between those 2 points? There's so many ways to look at this. There really is. There are astrological components to this.
Yeah, and it's odd in this whole paragraph here. I don't even know where this is written. I just Google things. And, it says Wednesday of an apparent suicide. It doesn't say a suicide. It says apparent. So was he murdered in Los Angeles? Or
Right.
a sacrifice? I don't know.
Yeah, because if it's not a suicide, then it's a homicide.
Right. Somebody died in every album cover that I've seen with a half-lit face. Somebody's died in the band or close to the band.
Yeah. And now we've got Eric Clapton, and we kind of got that whole, shadowy thing going again.
Yeah, somebody would say, well, I could still see his left eye. Somebody actually said that because I was previewing some of the, a few things on my site. I could still see his eye, his left eye.
Yeah.
But, and then you got the Layla thing on the right, the drawing, still one-eyed symbolism.
Yep.
And like you said, his son Connor, but there was also, I think in the next slide, what says Dick Sims dies, a bandmate.
He was the keyboardist.
Yeah, either he's the one that died as a sacrifice or his son Connor, which they said was an accident falling out of a window, but, I don't know. And it seems like Eric's fighting some of that now, like he's fighting, about getting the jab for COVID and things, and I almost feel like he wants out of it now, and I don't think you can get out of it. I think once you've signed something like that, you're done.
Yeah, when Eric talked about his experience with the shots,
Yeah.
he was ridiculed like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
He was relegated to persona non grata within the music and entertainment industry, and this is a guy that many people considered a guitar god.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think maybe you're right. Maybe Eric's gotten to the point where he said, you know what, I just can't do this anymore.
Right.
And he made his pact a long time ago.
Yes.
And many years have gone by. And I'm telling you, for a lot of these people, especially the ones that have lived long lives, there's got to be some sense of regret that you actually entered into that pact.
Yeah.
I mean, who wants to be in their 80s?
Right.
running around on stage.
Except for Billy.
Except for Billy, yeah.
Except for Billy. Yeah.
He loves it.
We always have a special case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to the next slide, and we have Chester Bennington. This got a lot of play when it happened.
But there's the triangle in the center.
Yep.
There it is.
Black and white duality.
Right.
Yeah. Some of these bands I'm not as familiar with, but I wanted to actually, it was either Mary Campbell, who's part of our research group, and she might have found this one. She found a few of them in there for us, and she was helping us a lot. So I just wanted to mention her. She's part of our team too.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are digging some pretty good stuff up. And here we have James Taylor, and what do we have again?
The one-eyed symbolism again. There again, this is some guy I grew up with, I mean, I listened to his music. It sounded pretty, there's nothing dark about it in any way. But think about his connection with Apple Records with the Beatles. He was like the first one signed on, good friend of Peter Asher's.
Yes.
And then, I found this paragraph about Fire and Rain, and you read that, and it's pretty crazy what it says there. Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you, the plans they made. So don't you think that's somebody that planned her death in a plane? It seems like it to me. I could be way off, but that's what I took it as.
I watched a JT interview with Colbert. In fact, I put it up on my community tab this morning, and it was very weird. So he's in the, he's having the interview, and he gets asked by Colbert about his recollection of when he signed on or auditioned for Apple.
Right.
And like you said, Steve, he was connected into Peter Asher, and Peter Asher was the A&R person, or one of the A&R people, talent scout, if you will, for Apple. So he brings James Taylor to Apple, and I think George Harrison and Billy were there, and I think it was Billy that JT played for, and I guess Peter Asher had a tape or something of a song or two. And James Taylor says in this interview that he has no recall of the details of that audition. He can't remember it.
Well, he was strung out on heroin, too. You got to remember that, at least from what I know about him. He had a pretty, unless that's made up, but, he was pretty bad. But he was in England, and I guess he was in there during the recording of the White Album, too, from what I read.
Yes. Yeah, he was there. Yeah, he was there for the White Album. And so, a lot of times I have a lot of trouble with these stories about heroin use and everything else. It's like they said John Lennon was addicted to heroin, but yet we don't really see John Lennon strung out on heroin. So he was allegedly using heroin during the Let It Be sessions, right?
Yeah.
Now, let me just say this, guys. I know a person that is addicted to heroin, and a heroin addict is not functional. The only thing a heroin addict is interested in is more heroin.
Right.
Is getting their next fix. They become a shell of a person. They shut themselves off from the rest of the world. Their health degrades. So when they start talking about these guys, this guy was on heroin, that guy's on heroin, or was, I'm not saying maybe they didn't dabble in it, but when they start talking about heroin addiction,
yeah,
and then we see these people actually functioning, I have a hard time with that, based upon my own personal experience of knowing somebody who is a heroin addict.
Right.
So the whole thing with JT, first of all, I would question how a heroin addict is sitting down writing songs.
Right.
That's the first thing I would question.
Yeah.
So there's something up with that story. That's the only thing. And maybe what I'll do is I'll take a bit from that interview and I'll insert it here so people know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to read that paragraph. I mean, people can read it on the screen. We're up here long enough on it.
Okay, so it says the real story behind Fire and Rain, as I understand it, is that some friends of James were going to surprise James by bringing his girlfriend Suzanne to one of his concerts, unbeknownst to James. According to the story, Suzanne's plane crashed, and then in quotes, sweet dreams and flying machines in pieces on the ground. So her plane crashed on her way to see the concert, and Suzanne dies.
Yep.
And then a quote from the song again, Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you. Very, very, very weird. I mean, not even weird. It's creepy.
Pretty creepy. And I always, like I said, I grew up with him. I went to a lot of his concerts. Thought he was, like apple pie, He was wholesome Americana to me. And then you look at this dark side of it, and I couldn't really find that somebody died other than Suzanne, so I believe that was his ritual sacrifice.
I was introduced to Peter Asher, who, of course, had been part of the British invasion of
Peter and Gordon.
Peter and Gordon, yeah.
Yeah.
Peter really, he's the one who gave me my big break.
And what was he at Apple?
He had just signed on as head of A&R, which is essentially talent scout. And yeah, he was looking for people to sign. It couldn't have been better timed. And I went over to visit Peter, and I played him my little demo. It was on a reel-to-reel tape, you know.
Yeah.
And he liked it, and he gave me a guitar, and I played a few other things. And ultimately, he said, "Yeah, this sounds good. Let's go to Apple and see if we can interest a Beatle in it." So that's what we did. We went over there, and the way Peter recalls it, I have very little memory of the day because I'm nervous now, but at that point I was like vibrating at about 440 hertz.
An A.
Yes, an A. I was really nervous, and I barely remember it. I felt as though I was underwater for the entire day.
So who was there when you get there? Were there any Beatles available? Did
There
they
were.
get one of them out of their crate?
The way Peter remembers it, yes, that's right. They busted a seal on a can of Beatles, and Paul McCartney and George Harrison were there, and the way Peter remembers it is that we went into a room in Baker Street, which is where the Apple offices were at that point. And Peter leaned out of the door into the hallway and said, "Is there a Beatle in the house?" And it turned out there were two Beatles.
Sure, that's enough.
But Peter said, "Listen, I've got this guy here. I'd like to sign him to the label, but so let's take a listen." And I played Something in the Way She Moves to George and Paul, and I don't actually remember the anything about it.
All right, then we have Steve Marriott from Humble Pie.
Yeah.
And here we have the one-eyed symbolism again.
Yeah. And he was fairly young too, I believe.
44 years old.
Yeah.
And then, Steve, you said you found this picture on the internet.
Yeah. It's it was a stage thing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I could have gotten so many more album covers up on here, but we'd be here all day. So, you know, I want people to look around at them, though, because you can look at any artist, like I said, and you're going to find this one-eyed symbolism, pyramids, and you're going to find somebody who died, you know, that was close to him.
Yeah, to the right, it says human sacrifice is a ritualistic killing of one or more human beings so as to appease a deity, a demon, or other supernatural force. Often it is considered a barbaric act, but depending on the time period or culture, it could be a common occurrence, as was the case with the Aztec civilization, or worshipped by billions as a righteous or spiritual event, such as Jesus Christ on the cross, which was referred to as the crucifixion. It is also used in some forms of black magic to obtain power from the death and or suffering of victims. Often this is done with ceremonial daggers, pyres, or other ancient execution methods, and a victim is usually picked for a specific reason, such as being a virgin. Okay, again, this stuff is dark, folks, but it's out there. Then we have Supertramp, and so with Supertramp, this is a foretelling of 9/11. This is actually a famous image that a lot of people in the truth community picked up.
Yeah, and that's a reversed image, like a mirror image, because Super the other way, and it's just reversed. But 9/11 behind those towers, did that come out before or after the towers collapsed?
It was before.
Yes, it was. And all the ingredients are there. I mean, the waitress, the plane, the WGC when it was still there, everything is there.
And by the way, the color orange in numerology is 33.
Right.
And she's holding up a glass of orange juice by the towers. 33, Freemasonry.
Yeah.
And 9/11 pops up everywhere. It pops up in lots of movies and you know.
Yeah, anybody that watched my first video with Mike, I mean, I'm still seeing the 9/11 thing all the time. Like, I feel like I'm cursed now in that sense. So, really, all the time. I think it was from memoirs. They have something in there that puts you up to something. I don't know.
Once it grabs you, it gets a hold of you.
You know, that's why I try to get away from it now and then. I tell people, don't stay with this too long. I'm constantly at it, but I step away from it, like Mike says.
Yeah, you got to take a break. People always ask me, oh, when are you going to look at this? When are you going to look at that? I'm like, you know what? I'm not. I've looked at enough, and I have a life, and there's other things that I want to focus on.
Yeah.
I don't want my head buried in Billy stuff.
There's also a lot of people that say, you should take a look at this and you should take a look at that. But in the meantime, what do they do?
Well, I actually write back to them sometimes in the comments section. I'm like, well, sounds like you have something to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like you should crank up your YouTube channel and, start doing some research and putting some content up. I mean, look, we can't do all of this stuff. We're just, there's so much out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at it as entertainment. That's the thing, right? They're not looking at it really to understand really what's going on, to really understand what reality is all about. Some people just look at this as it's entertaining.
It's revealing.
It is revealing. And you do want your presentations to have entertainment value from the standpoint of it keeps people's focus and attention, right?
Right.
But it's not entertainment, right? So anyway. All right, so let's move to, you've got this image of Billy, and he's got his children, and there's a Dalmatian, and it looks like there's two Marthas, because there's a dog behind the Dalmatian, right?
There's two.
I was never aware that Tani provided this picture, and it's almost like they hid the second Martha, or, I know, wasn't there a dog named Jet, too? I remember the song he did. So I remember he said about breeding them, maybe that's the breeder, but why would he hide that with the duality Dalmatian in front of it? Why wouldn't you put the dog in plain sight with the other ones?
Yeah.
Something mysterious about that picture to me.
I've never seen this picture before until you guys showed it. Okay, so the next one's a mind blower.
Yep.
Oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the left, that's James McCartney. On the right is Aleister Crowley.
I thought it was a match. It was mind-blowing to me that everything matches up. It's got to be his grandson. I don't know. Anybody that defeats,
Good Lord.
the eye, expression, everything.
I'm absolutely certain of the fact that, but that's of course me, but I sure think that Aleister Crowley is Billy's dad. I do.
I do too, and there's people that don't want to believe that. And he was quite old when he had Billy. He mentions it in memoirs quite often. Not that he's his father, but son of the magician. And what do they call Aleister Crowley?
Yeah, Billy definitely, in memoirs, he drops a lot of clues that would make you dig into it and come to the conclusion, that's how I should say it, that Crowley is his father. What I tell folks is, we don't have concrete evidence. So
we don't.
I do lean toward the fact that it is likely that Crowley is his biological father. But if Crowley is not his biological father, then he's definitely bloodline related to Crowley.
Sure.
Okay, at the very least, there's bloodline connections. But this image of James and Crowley is a mind blower.
Yeah, it's striking. It really is.
Stunning, yeah.
The poor guy can't catch a break.
It almost has that whole depressive look, even, angry, depressive look. Russian matches even perfectly,
Very heavy. Yeah, very heavy.
If you read about James McCartney, and I haven't read a lot about him, but what I have read, his relationship with Billy was up and down. It's got to be tough living in Billy's shadow. It has to be.
It has to be, yeah.
And now he looks like Crowley.
Wow.
Unbelievable. At the ages, we're going to have to watch him. I hope I live long enough to see if he turns.
Yeah. Who put this together, by the way?
I believe that might have been on the Facebook site I have. I can't take full credit for it. I don't think Tani gave it to me, but I think somebody posted it, and I don't.
Well, I didn't give it to you, Steve.
I believe somebody posted it.
Well, whoever did it, good job. All right, so the next slide, we've got all the spirals, and this has to do with mind control, and we have the spiral on the old Capital 45s, which I still have, by the way. I have plenty of them.
Yeah, me too.
You know what I started thinking about, Mike, with this? Besides the fact that Billy uses these hypnotizing spirals, is that as a kid, these 45s, I put them on my turntable and watch them spin around, And I had to, back when I was a kid, I had some goldfish. I'd watch them swimming around, and I'd be burning incense thinking I'm cool with the long hair, and I'd be watching that spiral spinning around. Makes you wonder if they were even trying to implement that to us on a 45 record. I don't know. That's why I put this in there.
Oh, absolutely. It'll definitely put you into a hypnotic state.
I had it spaced out, and I wasn't even doing drugs at the time. I'd be in my room just, and I just relax. Record spinning, So, and my fish swimming around. So, it's it's really funny, kind of, And then I see this video with Billy, and who cares? And got all those spirals, almost the same darn thing,
And then we have his, quote, brother to the right.
That's his brother, how he looks. I didn't even know that. I think you added that.
Yeah, that's Mike McCartney or Mike McGear. Yeah, but look at the spirals, So what's with the spirals there, too?
Yep.
All right. So, Steve, so you were staring at goldfish, you were doing drugs, and you were watching the center of the 45 spin. So how did your parents find you most of the time? Were you catatonic?
Well, actually, I said I wasn't doing drugs. I'm not saying I never did them, but
okay. Sorry.
Or marijuana was pretty prevalent. Now it's legal everywhere, just about. So I did do it back in the day. I wasn't doing it in my room though. I'd put incense on, light it up. I'd listen to a Beatle record or some record and just kind of veg out. And I'd watch that turntable spinning. I'd actually watch it because the spiral. It was interesting the way it kind of mesmerized you. Now I'm thinking, man, it did mind control on me.
They were already, yes, they were.
Yeah.
And then the song, too, The Beatle by Gary Usher.
If you look down in the middle to the right, who does it say produced it?
It says produced by Kermit Walter and Gary Usher. All right, so I think that wraps it up. The final image is George peering through some tulips. And where did you get this image from, Steve?
That's another one somebody posted, Am I allowed to give a plug for our site again? Because last time we did, we got like 400 new members.
Of course.
It's called The Many Faces of Billy Shepherd. So if anybody wants to search that out. And somebody had put that up there, and what I thought was interesting is the tulips again. I would have rather had like Billy behind that, but it's got George Harrison looking through them.
Yeah, it's like George looking through the bent back tulips, right? To see how the other half lives.
To see how the other half lives. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, absolutely.
So what I'll do, Steve, is I'll put the link to your Facebook page down below.
Yep.
And you also make sure that you weed out the trolls.
I'm doing that on a constant basis because it's nuts. But,
I know.
I don't mind it because I feel like we're enlightening people. And the more people that know this and the more people that watch your videos, I think last time we had close to 14,000, and maybe you had some on other channels that you do things on. But our third one was a big hit, it seemed like. So. Yeah,
it goes up on my Poll is Dead page. It goes up on my main channel, Sage of Quay. And then it winds up on BitChute, Brighteon, Rumble, and I'm missing one, Odyssey. And if I can, obviously with the images here, I'm not going to be able to do it with this one, but a lot of times I'm also able to put them onto my audio platforms like Mixcloud, Spreaker, and stuff like that. This won't be able to do that because there's too many images and people listening won't be able to understand what we're talking about. But yeah, no, the last show, all of the shows actually did very, very well. But yeah, the last show did very, very well. And as this one will also. This one will do very well also. Yeah, and I suggest everybody watch from the beginning so they get an idea how we came about all this. And I know you combined two of them together. I don't know, at some point you could put them all together. That's a long time, though. I've done that every once in a while to pin them together because sometimes people just want that one video and they'll watch, 4 or 5 hours or whatever. That's fine. I'll do that. Yeah, we barely heard a peep out of John this time, though. I feel bad. John, do you want to say something?
I've had to sit on mute because, look, animals, and I'm trying to keep them quiet.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. But John, you did a great job with the drone footage. That's going to be in the show. All right, guys, I got to run. It's 2:00. I got to get some things done. Hey, what's your boy's name?
Aiden.
Oh.
How you doing?
Hello. I think you just want to say hello.
My name's Billy.
Yeah.
You guys are going to be on YouTube.
Right.
All right. All right, guys, take care.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Adios.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And that concludes another Sage of Quay interview, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Links to my guests' websites and social media are listed in the description box below. And as always, I would like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog. You can find all my social media and web links by visiting my hub website at sageofquay.com. Also, if you get a moment, please visit laboroflovemusic.com to check out my music and album releases. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone with the next show. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.
the pills, got nothing to lose because you're owned. Yeah, you're owned. You ride the train, lost in a fog, stare at your phone. You're just a cog because you're owned. Yeah, you're owned. You work a job just to survive. You have a pulse